definitely poorer. Okay, that is good. That is okay. So that's fine. So it gets poorer because squeezing will reduce the space. It will make the rocks a lot more compacted. It will make the grains become tighter to each other, and then it reduces the quality in a case like this. And then where there's extension or where there's stretching, it depends. But for the most cases, it makes it better. Okay, so let's move on. So this last slide shows you what can happen, what else can happen, the products from the changes that happen to the reservoir. In this case, there's something we call faults or joints in this very case. Okay, so joints are basically just discontinuities, and they're all as a result of what? Stress. The rock, the original rock itself. Imagine, like I said, imagine you being the rock, and you're being from one place to the other, from Enugu to Lagos. You go through, you're moving a lot. Okay, you're going through a lot of changes in conditions. You're going through a lot of sometimes stress. By the time you get to Lagos, if you are coming by bus, you can imagine your looks. You can imagine how tired it will be. So these rocks themselves, they get stressed up as they move from one location to the other, and then as they also go through different realities from one environment to where they ultimately deposited. So yeah, so the reservoir gets stressed up. In this case, you can see that we have different examples, and then in this very case, you can see my cursor. It's because generally there's been some evidence of life. That's what you're seeing here. It's called, like I said in the previous slide, burrows. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, so this is again showing you additional products, additional expression of the products. This is a very clean view of a core, of a core. So what you're looking at is a reservoir rock that has hydrocarbon, hydrocarbon in it. So these black lines are the hydrocarbon line. But one thing I want you to notice is that this also shows you that the reservoir rocks have been stressed. If you can see my arrow, you can see what we call micro faults, okay, the direction in which movement has happened. So originally this was continuous, but because of stress, there's been movement. So when you see a core like this and you see evidence of this displacement, it tells you that that rock or that region or that area was stressed as at the time that this rock was deposited or thereafter. Okay. So it's again just showing you how we started from. If you look at this figure on the bottom left, you remember the beach environment with the beach waves coming in and out, and what it does to the sand. Very fine sand, good porosity. You can almost see them. And then potential, like I said, evidence of life. You see this? These are what we call gastropods. Okay, you can see this. You may have a local name for it. These ones, bivalves. These are just showing you that even when the reservoir was deposited, there was activity going on. Living things were there. And those living things, they either help the reservoir quality or they make it poorer by their activities. Okay. And then through time, this thing gets layered one on top of each other. It forms this, what you're seeing on the top left map figure there. And then eventually, for example, this is an example, through time, it gets what we call further indurated or consolidated. They become less porous, they become tighter, okay, especially for class 6. And then some other thing can happen to the rocks. They may get stretched, they may get squeezed, and then you may start seeing something like this. If you look at what we call thin section, if you take a slice of these rocks and look at them in a microscope, you can now start studying their porosity. So those green lines there are different kinds of porosity, but I'll talk more on that as we progress. So this picture is also show you how it starts from being very loose to being layered on top of each other, and then being consolidated, and then being deformed. That's what this cycle is showing you, and I hope you really appreciate the flow. Okay, so let's look at what I call the squeeze the box experiment. Just my own nomenclature, just for you to better appreciate how some of these things might happen. And then at this level, we're thinking of the reservoir at the level of thin section, at the microscopic level. So imagine the initial stage, the undeformed rock, the rock that was just dislodged from its parents, which you saw in those videos. It hasn't gone through a lot of changes, no compression, nothing. This is what it looks like. Imagine we, in this meeting, are individuals. We have names where Osa, Biu, Kuje, Ore, Eko, and Awa. We're just individuals. We're all parts of the reservoir, okay? Just chilling, nothing has happened to us. We're just birthed, okay? And then we imagine moving to the next stage where life begins to happen. You're transported from one location to the other, either rapidly or quietly. You saw those videos, the beach environment, you saw the alluvial environment, you saw the desert environment, you know, you also saw the mudslide. Imagine those kind of movement. Imagine you are traveling from Enugu to Lagos or from Kaduna to somewhere else in Abuja. Things happen, the roads, everything, you get stressed up. So that's what this reservoir is going through. It's getting squeezed because of the realities happening, right? So right now it's thriving, there's stress. And I want to pay attention to what has happened to the volume of space. Initially, just focus for a moment here between Biu and Eko, between Kuje and Osa. Look at this blue, space in there. Consider that is the porosity. That is where the carbon can fit in, okay? Where oil and gas can go squeeze themselves in. And then imagine that as a result of pressure, the space continues to get squeezed. And then at the last stage, you're barely surviving, okay? You see, because of squeezing, because of pressure, because of realities, what has happened, and we're seeing all kinds of reduced porosity, okay? There's something you will see in the next set of slides, what we call pressure solutions, where as a result of stress, we now begin to, interact so closely with each other that we create something else called a pressure solution, okay? So that's what this experiment is about. So as the reservoir goes from the initial to the altered stage, what happens? It begins to get altered. It begins to change in its property, in its porosity, in its permeability, in its capacity to really function as that original reservoir that you saw at the beach or in the desert or in the other locations. Okay, so let's think about it. Grain gets deformed because there's a lot of activities going on. There's cement precipitation around the grains, and there is what we call pressure solutions. And you will see some examples, and this is an example. Okay, so these are two different grains. And again, by the way, this is real. This is not from just an imagination. This is real rocks that was sliced into a thin section, a microscopic section. And then we looked at it in the microscope, and then you observe these things. And good thing is this rock was taken from an area that was stressed. We already knew that. So we're looking out for these signatures. What you will see is this pressure solution. Because there is limited space, there is pressure, there is compression. The individual grains at those interfaces where they meet are now crystallized because of kind of pseudo melting of the grains. It now creates what we call a pressure solution between those individual quartz grains. Okay, so that's what we call like a suture zone. Okay, and I did say, imagine tectonic plates. I talked about tectonic plates initially, right? Imagine those initial plates moving towards each other, the earth crust to become squeezed. Imagine what it does to the rock themselves, the rock that is being squeezed. At microscopic level, these are the kind of things you will end up seeing. Okay, now let's go on. There's something we call, again, still looking at the reservoir in an altered state, something we call quartz overgrowth. So overgrowth is basically chemical precipitations around the individual grains. And they are all, again, in reaction to changes in both the physical and the chemical conditions of that grains. As you continue to move, things change, okay? So another thing I need to pay attention to will be different kinds of porosity. Here we have fracturing of the rocks. This has been stressed. And then you have iron oxide filling in this original pores. Yes.
Sorry to cut you short. We would like you to just put on your cursor. We can't see your cursor, sir.
Okay, let me see. Pointer option. Let me use a laser. Can you see it now? Can you see a laser?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay.
Yes,
thank you for mentioning that. All right. So this is what we call quartz overgrowth. Basically, where you have some chemical, creation around individual grains, and it's all as a result of changes in conditions, both physical and the chemical conditions of that rock themselves, and they're all in reaction to pressure. Now, imagine what this does to porosity. Imagine what it does to permeability, because these are like the cement, or rather they seal the connected pores. So this brownish zone, originally pore spaces, and they have become filled by iron oxide. And then eventually you now have this quartz overgrowth coming in for that cement or block pore spaces. So imagine what this thing does. And then imagine what fracture does to the rock. If you can see the pointer again, in this case, fracture enhances conductivity, it enhances porosity because it creates an opening. So I need to think of it as the reservoir going through all these things and changing in its porosity and permeability other than what it had from the initial stage. Okay. Now I'm showing you other sections here. There are additional examples of fracture pores here. The green, what the PQ here is polycrystalline quartz, MQ is monocrystalline quartz. It's been broken again because of stress. Just like what happens when you get tired, when you're broken, when you're injured. Okay, it gives room for a lot of other things. So that's what is happening here. And then we have clay matrix. Okay, and then I had shown you pressure. So think of all of this as things that can happen to the reservoir from the initial to the altered state, and how that can affect both the primary and the secondary porosity and permeability of the rocks. Okay. In this other example up here, you can see preferred alignment of the grains. They look a little more elongate in one direction. That is because of action, compression, preferred orientation of stress in that area. And this is what it's doing to our rock. This is what it's doing to our reservoir at much tighter scale. Okay. So let's quickly look at the impacts again in terms of hydrocarbon storage capacity. I think I've hinted on that a number of times, but what I need to think of here is volumes. If that rock was originally, let's say it originally had a 40% net to gross, 40%, sorry. Again, porosity here refers to the volume of pore space or available opening that rock has that is capable of holding gas, okay? So think of it as how much of fluid can that reservoir rock hold? In this case, we're talking about volumes, okay? And then think of it in terms of if I'm an engineer, I want to plan a well, I have a field and I want to develop it. Where do I place the well? I want to place it where the best rock, okay, where I have the best connectivity, where I have the best porosity and permeability, of course, right? And then you also want to ask yourself, how compactmentized is this reservoir rock? That will determine, okay, how much will my well produce before it dies off? How many wells do I need to optimally develop this asset or this? So that's where this is going, okay? So you have to think of it in that regard. So let's go on. Okay, so before we look at some more, let's just think about the reservoir rock and its capacity to hold fluid. What drives those pore spaces? What controls the movement of fluid within it? First of all, there's gravity. That's number one. So naturally, the heavier fluids will go down. The lighter one will stay shallower. Think of it as gas on top of oil and oil on top of water. Okay, so gravity is there. Then there's something also called capillary force that also drives the placement of these fluids. And then force in this case is depending on what we call wettability. Wettability is just a function of it refers to the capacity or the tendency of the affinity of the rock, the fluid itself, for the host rock. If we're talking about oil as fluid, what is the affinity of that oil to get attached to the host rock or the parent grain, which you are seeing here? Okay, there's something we call the angle that the fluid makes. Let me just quickly sketch it if you can see that. If we have, let's say, a rock like this, I'm trying to sketch. I hope that shows. Okay, I don't think it's showing. Let me just exit the pointer. Okay, well, I'm trying to sketch, but it's not, okay, it can work now. All right, so if I have a rock like this, the host rock, and we have a fluid A is doing this, we have another scenario where the second fluid is doing that with the surface. This very case A, this fluid makes an angle of less than 90 degrees with the surface rock, okay? In the other case, the angle is greater than, this is the angle, is greater than, it's between 90 to 180 degrees, okay? So in a case like this, in case A, we said that this fluid is a wetting fluid because it's making an angle of less than 90 with the surface. In other words, the fluid has an affinity to get through the surface, to be attached to the surface. Think of it as cohesion and adhesion forces, the interplay between the two of them, okay? In the other scenario, this fluid is a non-wetting fluid. In other words, it does not have a potential to be attached or to be absorbed by the base parent, which is the base, okay? So capillary force is another set of force that determines how fluids move within rocks or within the host reservoir. And then the third one is viscous force. So this is basically, depending on pressure, where you have a fluid that is between two zones that are at different pressures. Okay? So there's a tendency to move preferentially in one direction as a result of higher pressure. So that's basically what this is. So let's think of it as part of what we need to understand in terms of the reservoir and its capacity to hold hydrocarbon. In this context, I'm saying the fluid behavior is dependent on the kind of force or the dominant force that is determining how it moves from one part of the reservoir to the other. And then as subsurface scientists, there's something we also do in reservoirs. We think about everything. I told you, again, the external features like what is the thickness, what's the shape of the reservoir rock, where did it come from, how rapidly changing are the boundaries, okay? And then the internal features, what are the faults? How many compartments do I have in this reservoir? Do I have layering or stratification? How continuous and connected are they? We think of this as reservoir engineers or geologists, okay, as subsurface scientists. So in a reservoir characterization, you think about all these elements. The habitat also, what's the pressure? What's the stress regime in that environment? Because that is also going to affect what becomes of the reservoir even after it's been altered, okay? And then what's the behavior of the fluid? Type of the fluid, is it a high API oil? What's the composition? Where did it come from? Are they fluid contacts? What are the properties in terms of viscosity and others? And then the rock themselves at the microscale, porosity, permeability, what is it? What are they? Okay, so these are things that we look at in this integrated evaluation of the reservoir rock. Okay, and then now let's go on. For a moment, I need you to think about, like I said, what is the impact of all this process on you as a subsurface scientist, as a production geologist, as a production engineer, as a development scientist? What is the impact of all the changes that the rocks have gone through? Now look at these different examples here. The first one, you have a huge, very good definition or very good expression of this surface reservoir rock. These are on the surface. But you also see that there are boundaries separating the different phases of the position. And then look at the other one. So the questions you'll be asking yourself is, a trap here? Because in this case, they're not folded, okay? They are not squeezed to form a trap. What is the connectivity, both vertically and laterally? And I'd like to type out, what do you think in terms of connectivity for this figure A? Are we going to have better connectivity horizontally or vertically? For the A and B, what do you think? Are we going to have things like, if I put a molecule of fluid in a particular layer here, will it move horizontally? Is it likely to move horizontally or vertically? Let me get your reactions. Okay, so I see for A horizontally, okay, horizontally. And then I think for B also, correct. So horizontally or lateral, both correct. Why? Because if you follow my cursor, these are like boundaries, and these boundaries, you can imagine that they compartmentalize the reservoirs vertically, at least on this section. So if I'm imagining that I want to drill a well, I will keep in mind that this is one compartment. Between this one and the other one, there is a separation. Question is that separation, is it a baffle or a barrier? I like to keep that in mind while I'm planning my well. And then I also want to keep that in mind while I'm doing a volume assessment. If I'm trying to calculate how much hydrocarbon is this reservoir rock able to hold, I will also imagine that this is a boundary here, and then the one below is also a boundary. I keep that in mind. Same goes to this one. Okay. And then as you're doing this, you're also thinking about the size of the reservoir. You remember what I said? If it came from fluvial or river settings versus when it came from desert or aeolian, or if it's a beach rock, they have different geometries, they have different properties. So the environment or the source of the reservoir is also very important in your characterizing it in terms of the size, the geometry, in terms of the porosity and permeability, in terms of connectivity. It is very important because you can see these are both surface reservoir rocks, but guess what? They have different geometry, different expressions. Even in terms of baffling, they have different boundaries, different expressions. Okay, and now imagine these two below. The one below on your left, for example, bottom left, that's figure C. You know what comes to mind? If you imagine that this layer here is your reservoir where you have my cursor. Question is, what are these faults really doing? If I have hydrocarbon, if I have oil here, let's assume that this dark layer is able to seal it up. Let's say it's a seal rock, or it's able to prevent the hydrocarbon from escaping. The question is, these white lines, which are called faults, as a result of, again, stretching. Remember we talked about stretching on the rocks or extension or some kind of, shaking of this terrain that caused this thing to, fracture and broke into these pieces that you're seeing. The question is, these faults here, are they helping to keep hydrocarbon within this reservoir rock, or is it going to act as a conduit such that the hydrocarbon will leak and get to the surface? That's the question that you ask yourself. Another question is, if the whole of this is reservoir rock, and I'm trying to drill a well from the surface to get, how much oil will this hold? How much hydrocarbon does it hold? How much gas will I find there? Okay. Another question is, how many wells do I need to develop it to get the oil out of it? Because there are many small compartments here. This is one, this is another one, this is another one. That means I will need several wells. Do I want to do that? If I want to do that, what's the profitability here? How much am I going to get? So these are things that you have to think about. Again, keep in mind, these reservoir rocks did not start like this. They started off clean, nice, continuous, not faulted, not broken like this, not folded like you're seeing on figure D. But then life happens and things happen. They get stretched, and then it forms the figure C. They get folded or squeezed, it forms the figure D. It gets compartmentalized by difference in conditions or difference in the sediment input, or and then you see the upper figure. So ultimately, what was initially simple and continuous and not consolidated, very porous, has become buried. In other words, porosity has reduced, has become shattered or folded or faulted. In other words, permeability and porosity has been impacted. And then that also impacts how much hydrocarbon that reservoir rock can hold. And I'm now worried about how much can I get, how much fluid is there. Okay, so this is like trying to put it together so that you have to think about this and ask yourself what matters. Okay, I'm seeing your comments. C is highly complex, and that's very true. In fact, the other question is this even going to hold hydrocarbon in the first place? Because everything looks like if I put a molecule of hydrocarbon here, it's going to go all the way and leak off. Okay, even if there are reservoir rocks there, does it even hold anything? Okay, I don't see. So these are questions that we all ask, and very good points that are being made here. Okay, so if we continue this discussion, again, I'm trying to zoom into a more tighter scale. I talked about bioturbation initially. I'm just trying to bring it back to you again to say, okay, think about, again, the impact of those organisms, their living organisms, the movements. Think about the impact of changes in conditions, changes in the rock type, laterally and vertically. Think about how they impact connectivity. Think about how they impact compartmentalization, and how ultimately it impacts you as a production engineer, as a production geologist, as a subsurface scientist. So that's what you're seeing here. I think I talked about this one. And then here you see all these clay drips, what they do. Clay are basically the same clay that okay? So they are major contributors to differences or variations in reservoir property in the lateral and the vertical sense, either as clay balls or as clay lamina. They reduce the effective porosity of reservoir rock. So you see that it's all coming together, okay? And then here you see this little, this is just an evidence how bioturbation, in other words, activities, evidence of movement of this organism, how they can enhance or not enhance the quality of a reservoir. In this very case, if a particular individual moved from this part to this other part, so it now broke this barrier or this baffle, which was originally separating this compartment from the compartment below. So moving across actually creates some kind of opening. Okay, so that's one way that bioturbation or evidence of activity of the past life in this context has actually enhanced the quality or enhanced connectivity in this reservoir. In some other case, it may not, especially if that pathway has been filled by muddy materials or clayey materials, and in other words, plugging that hole. Okay. So let's do a quick calculation, a quick let's just do a quick estimation of how a change in porosity might just affect the value of hydrocarbon that we're doing. So I have a link that I put out there. Again, this is online. So this is STOIIP calculator. Credits to the authors of this tool. So online here, I imagine that we have 400. I just type it in. Let's just say we have 500 acres of reservoir in terms of reservoir dimension, thickness times length times width. Okay, and then let's imagine that the thickness of that interval that is able to hold hydrocarbon, let's say 100 feet. Okay, let's imagine a porosity. Again, imagine a porosity is, okay, let's say 40%, 45%. In other words, the rock is so porous that 45% of that volume of rock is pore spaces or open spaces that oil or gas can occupy. In this case, oil. Okay, and then let's again imagine that oil saturation is in this case 75%, and shrinkage factor is 0.64, 1 over B sub O. If you do a calculation, if you run the calculation, it's giving us 83.7 or 3.8 million barrels of oil. Now let's imagine that same rock, okay, that same rock has been buried much deeper elevation, where, let's just say, I don't know if I can sketch on the screen. Okay, no, I can't sketch on the screen now. All right. So at a shallower elevation, porosity was 40, but through time, it becomes very compacted and it gets buried. And the porosity has now been reduced to, let's say, 25%. So let's change this porosity from 45. Remember, your volume was 83.8 million barrels. And then the porosity is now, let's just say 30 by burial or by compaction. And then I run the calculation again. You see your volume has reduced to 55.9 million barrels. What it was, 70 something to 55. So you can imagine what this does to our volumes, you know? So that's why putting it together, a very detailed understanding of how processes can impact your reservoir quality really helps us in our modeling, really, okay? And our understanding of how much the reservoir can hold in terms of volume and in terms of transmissibility of the hydrocarbon presence. Okay, so rounding off, I know there will be questions. I'll take the questions. What are the concluding thoughts? First of all, reservoirs are subjected to many or multiple phases of change from when they are birthed. In other words, from when they got dislodged from their source, and then they keep moving through, they are transported by different means all the way down to their final destination. And I said, not really. The changes don't even stop there. The changes continues even after the reservoir has been laid in its final deposition, in final environment. Why? Because like you saw, there could be plate movements, there could be compression, there could be space issues that will cause the reservoir to either get folded or squeezed or stretched in the case of extensional movements, okay? And there could also be some changes like we saw, biological evidence of activity, like biological activities where the fossils or this past life can also enhance or degrade the quality of the reservoirs. And in some other cases, chemical changes due to weather squeezing or so. There might be some kind of change, dissolution of minerals or some of these compounds might also enhance the reservoir or make it poorer, okay? So second point is that hydrocarbon storage capacity for most reservoirs depends largely on the final preserved connected pore spaces, not the initial one that you saw. If you remember the video we watched, not that initial sand that were all friable and very loose. No, that's like very porous. But as it gets buried and as it gets squeezed, the property reduces, the porosity, the connected pore spaces reduces, and ultimately some other processes can even further reduce it. And then what you get is what is able to keep hydrocarbon at the end of the day. In summary, proper 3D characterization of reservoirs, proper analysis of reservoirs is very key, and it's a prerequisite for accurate estimation of how much hydrocarbon you have in your reservoir, as well as making decisions regarding well placement and assets development planning. Like I talked about number of wells, I talked about how connected are these hydrocarbon traps. It's very important because it will determine that you're using one well or multiple wells, whether the well will produce for 10 years or 50 years or not. Okay, so this is just my quick thoughts on how the reservoir starts from the onset, where it begins as very loose and very unconsolidated, and then through experience, transportation, changes in different environments and different conditions, it gets altered to its final domain, where it's sometimes even further changed to have new property that now determines how much of oil and gas it is able to hold in place. So this is just what I have here. I know I tried to race through because of time, but I hope it was worth your while. Take questions. Thank you.
Oh, Dr. Ifeanyi, thank you very much for that exciting presentation. It was very, very exciting, especially for those of us that work as subsurface engineers. We actually opened our eyes to a lot of things that can make us function better in our different responsibilities. So I know we have a lot of questions. I will just go through the chat group now and then read out some of the questions if there are any. And I also have the privilege of raising the raise hand icon if you will. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody's hand raised.
Yeah, that's fine. I think yeah, there've been I see a comment that says yes, the faults could either act as structural trap or a conduit. Correct. So faults can actually act both ways. They could help enhance your trap. In other words, they could help preserve hydrocarbon storage in that reservoir. They could also serve as conduits, in which case, whatever you had there originally will leak off and pass through those faults. Depending on what you have in that fault, that's what we call fault zone. If the material you have there are not, porous and permeable, if they are more sealing, the fault will seal things. But if the materials you have there are more silty or sandy materials, if you have a hydrocarbon, any hydrocarbon in any reservoir down there, they're going to find their way through those faults and leak off. So that's why this is all important, really, to look at the big picture of the reservoir. What am I seeing? What has happened in this area, and how does that impact or affect the prospectivity of this area and actually the reservoir rock, really? So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ifeanyi. I don't know, since you decided to throw more light on one of the questions you asked, there were a couple of exercises that you actually made us go through.
Yes, yes, and that was to get people to react and follow and not slip up on me. So, yeah.
I don't know if you'd like to take one of them again, sir, because I saw some persons were in the comments that they couldn't follow through.
Hello, doctor.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. Someone has a question.
Hello, doctor. I have a question, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, we understand that after the reservoir has been deposited, we understand that, okay, according to the lecture, a lot of changes take place within the reservoirs. Now, in practice, when you are producing, after you have identified your targets for drilling, you are producing. And my question is that how do you compensate for these changes that take place within your reservoirs? And what time frame or limit are you looking at? Like, okay, what do you do to factor in these changes that take place at a certain period, a certain time frame? How do you compensate for that? How do you correct that?
So you don't. So the thing is, you really don't correct it. You just plan with it. Before you go in there to put in your well.
Yes.
To put in your well, you might like to annotate, but don't see the annotate option here. Okay, but before you go in there to put in a well anywhere, you will have done your own analysis to say, first of all, do I have a reservoir? Yes, which is good. Do I have a source rock that will generate the hydrocarbon that will find its way to the reservoir? Yes. Okay. Do I have a seal rock, a rock that will keep this thing in place, prevent it from leaking to the shallower, to the surface? Yes. Okay. Do I have any configuration, like some form of folding of the rocks that will create a trap? Yes. Okay. Now, all these faults you see, the next one is asking yourself, okay, what are these faults doing? Are they serving as conduits, or are they serving as sealing barriers? Are they keeping the oil in place? Are they allowing the hydrocarbon or the oil and gas to move away? Depending what you determine, if you determine that they are keeping the oil and gas in place, the next question will be, okay, what is the size of the compartments? A typical compartment that is connected, okay, million barrels, how many scuff of gas, for example? All right, so is that profitable for me as an individual, as an investor? Okay, if it's profitable, let's say it has 100 million barrels. How many wells do I need to, okay, first of all, I have a license, okay, to drill in this asset. How many year license do I have? Is it 10 years, is it 20 years, is it 50 years license? Okay. If I put one well, how long will it take to drain 100 million barrels if I put just one well? Again, you are keeping in mind how long your license will expire, when it's going to expire, okay? And how much it's going to produce, that compartment that you're interested in putting a well in. So if, for example, your license is 10 years, and if you put one well to produce for 50 years, that means you want to put 5 wells in there, so that in 10 years, you are done draining the 100 million barrels, in quotes, if that's possible. Okay, so you can't change a lot. All you can do is figure out that compartment that has the container that you are interested in. Okay, admin, please help us. Figure out the compartment that has the container you're interested in, and then figure out.
Sorry, Dr. Obi, you're muted.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think there are some non-conformable or some discordant fellows in here. Anyway, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, Doctor. We can hear you.
All right. So
yes,
I was saying that you can't do anything to change it because it's nature. All you need to do is work within the scope of what is available. Okay. Ask yourself, that content, how much is there? How much is trapped? How much is remaining? Ignore what has leaked off or what is not there. How much is there? Does it make sense to me economically? How many wells do I need to drain it? You plan ahead. There are people who are planners, who are called development planners, field or assets developers or asset planners. They come up with all this analysis and tell you, oh, for this opportunity in this field, you need 10 wells to drain it over 15 years or over 20 years. And then you have to plan that, because they have done an estimation of the volume. They have also told you need 10 wells. If you are not doing 10 wells, it means you need to stay longer and all those. So you can't change it. You only work with what you see after determining that the oil and gas is still in place. All right, so I think there's a hand. Otherwise, there's no more question, then that will be it.
Okay, so Shadrach has his hands up. Shadrach, please go ahead.
Okay, good morning, sir. Thank you for that great one. So my question goes like this. You made mention of capillary pressure in the reservoir rock, then the wettability factor also. So my question is, if we have a multi-phase reservoir fluid in that reservoir rock, take for instance, we have water there, we have oil, and we have gas. And we found out that this reservoir has a more wettability of maybe water is water wet, and less of oil and gas wet. So I don't know. In that case, well, what fluid will it likely produce more? Then again, if it's water wet and the water will be produce more as a result of the fact it's water wet, is there anything we can do to correct it so that it can, what we need is the oil or the gas. Is there anything we can do to make it produce more of oil and gas? And if that's true, we can do anything to correct that. Then what and what are chemicals are needed to correct that wettability factor so that you can get what we actually need, in which the oil and gas?
Yeah, so, well, I know there's a limit to what one can do or what humans can do. The subsurface is what it is nature. The fluid is what it is. We only try our best to say, you know what, we want this fluid and not the other one, okay? So if I have a trap and I have gas, oil, and water, the question is, what do I want? I want the oil or I want the gas. Indeed, let's assume I want the oil, okay? Initially, what you do is you go there and you're drilling. You're producing things, and you're not worried about water wet or oil wet or oil and non-wetting or so. You're just producing. But it is when you now get to a point where maybe your producibility is reducing, you now start thinking of, how do I enhance the mobility of this oil? How do I enhance the ease with which the oil can come out of the reservoir? Okay. And then you now think of enhanced recovery, enhanced mechanism. Either they're using warm water, or they're using some chemicals to induce or change the property of the rock itself, or you place your well in another location where the oil is more in accumulation and not close to where it's struggling to not come out from the reservoir. So it's either your well placement, you're placing it in the middle of oil, and so you produce the oil alone or so, or if you're producing the much you can and the oil is not coming out so much because of maybe reduced mobility or so, you'll find a way to enhance the recovery by either chemical stimulation or hot water or something else, something that will change the quality of the rock or the fluidity or the viscosity of the fluid itself and make it come out. Other than that, you can't change a lot of things. You can only just start producing until when you get to a point where you think you want to enhance things, you look for an alternate way to enhance it. And then it gets to a point where you just have to tell yourself, this is it. You leave the remaining, you can't take everything out of the subsurface. Some will still be there.
All right, so thank you very much for your response. So we have one more question in the chat group.
Please, I have a
would
question.
Like to know. Okay. Yeah, Samuel would like to know if the gamma ray log is a standalone for reservoir investigation.
No, it is not. You can actually use a lot of other logs. Gamma ray is there. SP or spontaneous potential is there. In fact, you can even use a resistivity log sometimes to integrate. There are other logs like NMR, nuclear magnetoresonance. I'm not an expert in that area, but gamma ray is just the basic gamma ray resistivity. But there are other logs that can give you a property of the rock themselves in terms of the geophysical property. And based on that, you can deduce whether this is sand or not sand, the lithology or the rock type itself. So it's not gamma ray alone. There are, in fact, many times you use this as an integrated, in an integrated sense, not just one log, because you have to look at other things. For example, gamma ray with gamma ray, you may not be able to differentiate between shale and feldspathic, what we call feldspathic or radioactive sand. You may not be able to, because they will both give you high gamma ray. So that is where you now need velocity logs like the sonic log to help you. You also need other logs that will help you figure out, even geochemical logs can help you, so that you're now able to tell that, oh, this elevated gamma ray I'm seeing is not because this is sand, but it's because there is a radioactive material within the rock. So that's why it's not a standalone. It's usually in an integrated sense that these logs are looked at. I don't know if that responded to the question properly, or if it made sense.
Yeah, I think it does, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Because of our time, we might not be able to take more questions or contributions. Thank you so much, Dr. Ifeanyi, and everybody that has joined this call. It's been a very, very exciting 1.5 hours so far. And for us, it's particularly good that we can have someone with someone like Dr. Ifeanyi with his vast experience to come technical study group. Thank you so much. Okay, so we
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So because of our time, we move quickly to segment of this particular to quickly go ahead with the announcement. AB, if you're on the call, please kindly unmute.
Yes, thank you, Dolapo. Good morning, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, AB, I can hear you.
Okay. Though I can't see the screen, I don't know whether it's from my hand. Yeah. Okay, so why Dolapo is sharing the screen, I want to really thank Dr. Ifeanyi. I learned a lot, and the programs that we're having coming up next, we believe they are going to also be foundations to some of what we learned today. So we're having 4 major programs coming up after this month, and the first of those programs is going to be the one we have today by 5 p.m. by one of our vibrant student chapter, SP Novena University, and it's going to be titled Leveraging Networking, Volunteering, and Mentoring for Personal and Professional Development. I must say I'm amazed with the level of speakers over there. So if you have time today, 5 p.m., please let's join SP Novena University. This is a world-class event for me because of the speakers that have been gotten for this program. The next we'll be having on the 23rd of November is the role of CCS and hydrogen in the energy transition. So this is the distinguished lecture series from SP Warwick section, and which will be anchored by Rushan Glow from Low Carbon Energies. So please let's make our time on the 23rd of November to attend a distinguished lecture series. Registration is currently ongoing. And also the following day, we'll be having a student monthly series with one of the engineers from ExxonMobil, Shinyere Princess Ofo, and she's an SP International Recognized Awardee. She's going to be telling us how we can maximize networking and volunteering opportunities in SP. Also, Kristen alongside will be sharing some thoughts. Also, will be moderating the session. Look forward to that particular program, especially for ESCOs, executives, members on the call who want to maximize these networking opportunities in SPE. I'm a beneficiary of how these networking and volunteering opportunities in SPE can really transform to personal growth and even professional growth. So please look forward to that session on Thursday. And the young professionals will be having also a session on gas turbine power plant recommendation and installation design using well performance data with Ayomide Akindaosi, who is from Topline Limited. So we look forward to that technical series too from the young professional. These are the programs we have for this month. Please look forward from today, the Novena University section, until 30th of November. We hope to see you in more of our programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, AB, for the announcement. Okay, yeah. So I'll just quickly go to our membership drive. And I'm sure for everyone that has joined this call today, you agree with me that one of the primary benefits of joining SPE is access to technical resources, just like what Dr. Ifeanyi has shared with us today. So if you're not yet a member of SPE or you've not registered with SPE Warri Session, kindly use this opportunity to reach out to us via email or phone call and then be a member, or as well renew your membership subscription. And what are the benefits of joining the SPE? Number one, you have access to technical resources, and just like AB has said as well, you have opportunity of meeting with your peers and even getting access to a network of highly placed people in the industry who can serve as mentors for you or to you. You also have access to training and certifications. Some of the programs that we hold in the section are geared towards equipping us to function better in our career. So if you're a member, those are the things that you enjoy. And then again, for every work and labor, there's always reward. You know, you get rewards and recognitions for your contribution to XP. Amongst many other things that SPE does for you, it's also important that you belong to a professional organization that can help you build your career and also help you also expand your network of professional colleagues. And that's what XP Warri Session provides. So if you can join our session, the award-winning section. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's been an exciting day and a very, very good way to start our weekend, you know. And for us, we would like to capture these memories with us taking a group photograph with the speaker of today. So if you don't mind, I'd like us to please put on our videos now and let's take a group photograph. So this is the time where you're allowed to put on your video without anybody turning it off for you. Okay. All right, thank you. I can see Dr.
Sorry,
George.
I think you need to stop sharing so that we can have it in gallery view. Okay. Thank you. And well done.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, I need to take you off spotlight. Just hold on. Yeah, a moment. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe if you're there, please help me take a picture as well. I'll take from my end too.
Okay, come again now.
All right. Okay, this is good. So I'll say SPE and then you can say oil and gas. SPE.
Oil and gas.
Oil and gas.
Okay. Oil and gas.
SPE.
Okay. So just one more, please, because of my time and your time. Let me take the last one. So for our student member that joined us, thank you very much for joining. Yeah.
So
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So for vote of thanks, I'll call on Dr. George Best to give us the vote of thanks. We can turn off our videos now. Thank you very much, everyone.
So that is the reason why I say our father.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can we hear me?
I don't think we have 10 of them now.
I can, but you're a little bit faint, sir.
Yeah, our grandfather.
Okay.
Well, this one that
I don't know. Is it louder? Can we get it clearer?
You can go ahead now.
Okay. So this has been a really exciting one and a very interesting one. I make bold to say that this is the best I've heard in terms of reservoir evaluation and trying to look into what we have. I want to start first by saying a very big thank you to the section chairman, Mrs. Magdalene Umo, the study group chairman, and then the presenter, noble presenter, Dr. Ifan, you really did justice to this topic about the reservoir. I know most of my students here I will have to better ways to describe techniques and everything about the reservoir from initial to that stage. For them again, so you really had a hands-on exposure to all it takes, and I must say a very big thank you. If we had this more open, then we wouldn't struggle in the lecture. We won't have to struggle because the students would have had a real-time exposure to what is actually obtainable for reservoir. So I'm saying a very big thank you to everybody that contributed in one way towards the success of this study group technical lecture for research. We say a very big thank you. We look forward to having more of this. We look forward to better collaboration in the future. We look forward to more exciting discourses along the research line of discourse. We want to say thank you very much. We look forward to seeing us again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. George. Madam, over to you, ma'am.
Okay, is it me? Dalakwa, is it me? Oh, I didn't hear what you said, please.
No, okay, no. So I was going to call him Dr. Amobi for the closing prayer. That's the second standard, the national anthem.
Okay. Please, I'd like to request that we sing it because the national anthem is supposed to be sung.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello, ma. Hello, ma.
Yeah.
But because things were not done properly, some were like, what am I doing after all?
Okay, Dr. Amobi, over to you, sir. You can call daughters.
Okay, Dalako, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, okay, just before Dr. Amobi comes in, I just want to say the best two schools for the representation today at the study group session, it's Maritime University and Ekwueme University. So I'm very proud. Maritime, they have been coming. The chapter is yet to be instituted formally, but they have been coming with full force. Special appreciation to them and our Ekwueme. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations to both universities. Thank you. I hope we'll see more of you guys join our event. All right. So, Dr. Amobi, for the second stanza of the national anthem.
Let's sing. We cannot sing. Let's all sing the
And why emphasize for this issue?
Yeah.
It's so that when you say that,
you're faint.
Oh God
of creation, direct and power to lead us right. In love and all that is to build a nation strong. And justice shall reign.
right.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And have a very, very lovely weekend ahead.
And you too.
Yeah, thank you. Let the study group team just wait behind.
Thank you very much.
Study group, please hang on. Study group committee, hang on, please.
Hang
Just
on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Ifeanyi. We appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. All the board members, the students, and everyone that joined the call. We do appreciate it, and we hope we went away with something. Can you stop the live? Can you